Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily update for January 14th, 2021. Well, yesterday the House brought more shame on itself, the U.S. House of Representatives, by impeaching for the second time President Donald Trump. This time, 10 Republicans joined with the unanimous Democrats to cast a vote which was absurd on the face of it. There's the end of Trump's term is just over a week away. The rush to judgment was extreme, as I'll get to in a moment, but it culminates 4 years of lies, of slanders, of baseless allegations against Donald Trump, starting with Russiagate and the Mueller report, which have been thoroughly discredited. Every aspect of Russiagate has been exposed as a criminal conspiracy conducted by British intelligence, U.S. intelligence under Obama, the media, the Democrats, a section of the Republican Party, and especially important is the intelligence community in the United States and the FBI, which completely violated the FISA court regulations and their own standards in bringing lies to the fore to try to get rid of Donald Trump. Now, the Mueller report itself continued to uphold the most basic lie, which is that Russia meddled, Russia intervened, Russia hacked Democratic Party files, when in fact those files were downloaded. And what they showed was a conspiracy by Hillary Clinton supporters to make sure she got the Democratic nomination. Instead, they turned it into a witch hunt against President Trump. Then we had impeachment number one around Ukraine, when it turned out that the president did nothing that violated the law, whereas it became obvious during the course of the investigation that Joe Biden had done what Trump was accused of doing several years earlier when he blackmailed the Ukrainian government into firing prosecutor Shokin, who is looking into the illegal operations of his own son, Hunter Biden, with the Ukrainian firm Burisma. So another hoax. And now the most recent one. There's an article by John Solomon which raises some very interesting points about the rush to judgment. Evidence shows, for example, that the attack on the Capitol was a staged and pre-planned event, that the CIA, the FBI, and New York Police Department all had indications that there was violence planned leading into the event before President Trump delivered an address. Furthermore, that the Washington, D.C. law enforcement had been notified of the evidence that had been collected by the other law enforcement agencies. The U.S. Capitol Police Chief, Stephen Sund, briefed the congressional security officials, the House and Senate security officials, who rejected his call to bring in additional forces, including the National Guard. Now, that raises the question, how could President Trump have incited a riot when it was known that it was pre-planned? That is, some of the protesters were breaching the Capitol 20 minutes before Trump finished his speech. So this rush to judgment is another stain on the already tattered reputation of the House of Representatives. It remains to see whether the Senate will violate its oath to defend the Constitution by proceeding to convict President Trump after his term of office. Now, yesterday I reported that all of this was a pretext to justify measures of a phase shift in the world order, similar to what was done after 9/11 with the imposition of the security state, the surveillance state, using 9/11 as a pretext for that. We've referred to this as a Reichstag fire. That is something that was used to crack down on opposition. So what are we seeing as a result of this? Well, first, the effort to eliminate Donald Trump as an opposition leader, to diminish his stature, to criminalize him, to make him seem as an instigator of riots against the institutions of the country. Secondly, to expand censorship, because we've seen one platform after another not only eliminate the access of President Trump to them, which means he can't speak directly to his millions of supporters and followers, but also many other people who have been reporting on the truth, which has been censored by the mainstream media, have lost their platforms, including a number of friends of mine. And finally, and most importantly, criminalizing opposition to the plans ahead for a top-down dictatorship. Now, yesterday in her weekly dialogue with me, Helga Zepp-LaRouche said that this is an attempt to outlaw Trump's movement. 75 million people voted for him. These actions against Trump and against those people actually increase the danger of violence, as it convinces people that they have no voice for their legitimate concerns, that there's no one who's listening. Now, along with this, we see the pulling together of the ranks of the anti-Trumpers. One of the more disgusting of these individuals is Bill Kristol, the neocon, a charter member of the Republican Never Trumpers, who announced the formation of the Republican Accountability Project and said they're pulling together a fund of $50 million to contribute to Republicans who support the impeachment of Donald Trump, that they will contribute to Republicans because they'll lose their support from their base. And so he's raising corporate money to destroy this movement. This has caught the attention of many people. There are a number who are commenting on the overall effects of the censorship. One of the most eloquent of these is the Mexican president, López Obrador, who had a meeting yesterday with his cabinet to develop a plan to prevent private social media from taking away the right to freedom of information in Mexico. And López Obrador's comments were especially poignant. He said, "We cannot allow that a private company can establish itself as the world's censorship institution, like the Holy Inquisition of our day." And he reminded Americans that such censorship goes against freedom. And this is a quote from him, "Freedom is even the First Amendment of the United States Constitution," unquote. That from the president of Mexico, watching the destruction of our freedoms in the United States. Glenn Greenwald is among others who commented about the tech monopoly. He said, "Big tech now has more concentrated wealth and power than any in history." He cited Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon. And he said 3 times they've intervened to shape U.S. politics, in censoring the New York Post story on Hunter Biden, in banning Trump, and then in destroying the alternative platform, Parler. So what we're seeing is the showing of muscle of big tech, the Silicon Valley billionaires. And what do they represent? They're now fully integrated into the military-industrial complex. They represent one side of big finance because they've been built up through their stock valuations as the most valuable companies in history, even though most of them never turned much of a profit. The financial speculators love them. Their executives have become billionaires, and they have a monopoly on the spread of information. And given that the mainstream media is a source of lies, as LaRouche always said, the mainstream leads straight to the sewer. Well, you can't count on anything from the mainstream media. People move to alternative platforms, and now these alternative platforms are, for the most part, completely controlled by the big tech. And that means more lies, more control, more censorship. They're racing to get everything in place to back the Great Reset, which is being done because there's an expectation, a legitimate expectation, that we're heading toward a systemic crash. The whole system's coming down. It cannot be sustained that much longer. As we know, all bubbles eventually pop. Now, what's going to be there to back up this bubble? A network of central bankers working together to provide ample liquidity to the speculators while choking off all credit to productive enterprises worldwide, and then forcing people who lose their jobs to essentially accept handouts called universal basic income. This is a destruction of freedom, destruction of productive enterprise, a destruction of the very basis of the American system of physical economy. And the plan for the global bankers' dictatorship is in place. At the end of this month, there'll be a meeting of the Davos billionaires to finalize the plan, and it incorporates the Green New Deal. I'll be talking more about this tomorrow and taking your questions. If you do have questions for me, send them to me at harleysch@gmail.com. I'll be happy to take up your questions. And until then, go on to the LaRouche Organization site. We're posting some material that will give you more of a background into exactly what we're facing and what we can do to change it. And I'll talk about that again tomorrow. So thanks for joining me, and see you then.